Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second in the series of webinars about healthy gut, happy mind, or happy gut, healthy mind, however you want to look at it, the gut-brain connection. We did one of these webinars a couple months ago, and we got such an amazing amount of feedback from people. And so we decided to do a follow-up with more questions, but this time we decided to record it so that all of those who could not attend could hear it, because one thing we learned from the first one was this information is so important and so many people need to hear it. So with that, I will introduce my three esteemed guests. Super excited to have them. And the format we will do is I will ask questions, and I will start with John Payne, and then I will rotate between going to Dr. Aftab and Dr. Atkinson. So first, let me introduce John Payne. John is CEO of Pure Life Health Science Group. He heads a team of scientific researchers focusing on genetics, the gut-brain axis, and their relation to metabolic diseases. Mr. Payne has spent more than 45 years researching causes and solutions to metabolic syndrome health issues based on genetics and gut flora, DNA-based nutritional adaptation, and the interactions between the genes and the gut-brain axis that are critical to long and happy, healthy lives. Go ahead, John.
Well, thank you for having me, Lynn. Today, we're going to talk about something that is becoming more and more important in both natural wellness and clinical practice. And, it's called the gut-brain connection. For a long time, we've treated digestion, mood, cognition, metabolism, and inflammation as separate issues. But the science is showing us that these symptoms are deeply connected. The gut is not just where the food is broken down. It's a major communication hub for the immune system, the nervous system, the microbiome, metabolism, inflammation, and even brain function. So when Lynn gets in and asks us the questions, today I'd like to answer these questions in a practical way. What science suggests the gut-brain connection may be disrupted, what testing may be helpful, what you really should ask your doctor, and what lifestyle steps support better gut and brain health.
Thank you, John. Yeah, exactly. Because like I said, that first one, when you get people calling you crying and saying, I have felt horrible for years, and now I went to my doctor and felt equipped just because I attended your webinar. And that's not an exaggeration. It was literally said by more than one. One woman called me and said, I joined it about my son and ended up getting such amazing care for my husband. He didn't even realize he had leaky gut syndrome. So, that kind of stuff is crazy. So first, let me introduce Dr. Aftab. Dr. Aftab is present. Okay, I'm going to shorten your bios because otherwise we'll be here for 2 hours, because both of you are so amazingly esteemed. It would be. And plus, I'm not a scientist. I'm a grassroots political person, so I don't know all these words. Okay, Dr. Aftab is president of AMA Enterprises, Maryland, USA, and Vice President of Pure Life Health Science Group, a scientific medical research organization. He is a member and director of Tatsuko, Japan's leading battery developer and consultant of Oxford Medical Inc. in Europe. He has worked in scientific and medical field, especially establishing clinical and research laboratories nationally and internationally, medical and home health care centers. He has over 35 years of vast experience in the administration, teaching, research, training, and health and science field and business. Dr. Aftab, his bio is just, okay. And then we have Dr. Atkinson, who, and I always say this word wrong, my husband repeats it to me and I still say it wrong, Emeritus Professor of Medicine and Nutritional Sciences, University of Wisconsin-Madison. He is the past president of the Now Obesity Society, the American Obesity Association, and the American Society for Clinical Nutrition. His research focused on the mechanisms of weight loss with obesity surgery and on drug treatment of obesity. In recent years, he has he described the first human virus to cause obesity. Pretty amazing. Okay, so I feel like we're in really good hands here. So our first question, I'll do it in this. I'll ask John, and then I'll rotate between Dr. Uptop and Dr. Atkinson for them to answer. So, John, what would you say are the signs of a disrupted gut-brain connection? What would you tell someone would be a signal to them that they probably have a real disruption?
Well, a disrupted gut-brain connection can show up in a lot of different ways because the gut and the brain communicate constantly. On the digestive side, people may notice bloating, constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux, abdominal discomfort, food sensitivity, or irregular bowel habits. On the brain and nervous system side, they may experience brain fog. Anybody out there experience that? Hold their hand up because I'm with you. Brain fog, low mood, anxiety, irritability, poor ability to focus, low motivation, sleep disruptions, food cravings, fatigue, or feeling like their body is constantly under stress. And the key point is these symptoms often cluster together. Now, for example, someone may say, I have bloating. I'm tired after meals. I can't focus, or my mood is just off. Traditionally, these may be treated as separate problems, but through the gut-brain lens, we ask different questions. Could the gut inflammation, microbiome imbalance, poor digestion, or blood sugar instability be contributing to how the brain and the body are functioning? And in children, this can look different. Parents may notice constipation, restricted eating, poor sleep, irritability, difficulty with transitions, behavioral dysregulation, or trouble focusing. Again, we're not saying that the gut is the only cause, but it often is an important part of the terrain that you have to look at. The gut-brain connection is a bidirectional system, meaning the signals go both ways constantly. And the brain affects digestion, the gut affects the brain. Cleveland Clinic describes this overlap between functional GI disorders, mental health, and neurological functions. And Johns Hopkins notes that the irritation in the GI system may send signals to the central nervous system that directly affects mood.
Okay, thank you. Wow. Yeah, I see a lot of those symptoms in myself. Dr. Optop, what is your...
John explained very well about that. As the disturbed gut-brain connection, often formally referred as a disorder of gut-brain interaction, because the gut and brain communicate continuously via nerve, hormones, and the immune system. A breakdown in two ways exists present in several reorganizable ways. Digestive distress, frequent bloating, gas, nausea, stomach cramping, and as already basically explained that to John also. And then the second is the mental emotional symptoms. That is unexplained anxiety, depression, mood swing, and high emotional sensitivity. And then third thing is sleep disturbance. Insomnia or poor sleep quality, often stemming from the gut's inability to help poorly regulate neurotransmitters and melatonin. Fatigue and immune issues. Explain chronic fatigue, getting sick frequently as disturbed gut lining can trigger systematic inflammations and immune system.
Wow. Okay. Frequent sick. That's something to really note. Dr. Atkinson?
Yes. I think from what John Payne and Dr. Aftab have said, it's interesting and fascinating that the brain and the gut and actually the whole body is our bodies are just actually amazing creations. Um, specifically, as the two earlier ones have said, there are neural connections from the gut to the brain and the brain to the gut and from the brain to the rest of the body. So there are neural things that can be affected. There are hormonal things that can be affected. I think probably a lot of people have heard of the uh, neurotransmitter serotonin, and think of that as a brain hormone, because some of the drugs that are used to treat depression, for example, uh, affect serotonin in the brain. Well, 95% of the serotonin in the body comes from the gut. So that just illustrates, and we're talking about the connections between the two. The main connection is the vagus nerve, and again, about two-thirds or more of the signals that go back and forth go from the body up to the brain. The brain sends down signals to alter the way the gut functions, the motility, gastric emptying, intestinal motility, um, whether you've got constipation or diarrhea. So the neural factors are very important, but they don't act alone. I've talked a little about the hormones, but the gut is perhaps the biggest endocrine organ in the body. It produces all kinds of hormones. I did a lot of work on obesity, and I think most everybody knows now that the big thing is these new drugs that are treating obesity, the GLP-1s. That's GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide, and that hormone is made in the gut, predominantly in the lower gut, uh, and it, uh, it goes up with a meal to decrease to increase satiety, decrease the rest of the food intake. There are many other hormones, for example, the whole pituitary adrenal axis making steroids. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and if people are stressed, one of the factors that can happen is the brain it reacts to this and affects the gut. Then there's something that I don't think has been mentioned much so far. That is the gut microbiota. That means the organisms that are in the gut, bacteria, viruses, and fungi, and they are absolutely critical. It's quite fascinating to me that in people who are depressed, schizophrenic, psychotic, some with Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease, the gut bacteria are different. And about 50% of the time, for example, with depression, about 50% of the time, the people with depression, the depression seems to start the abnormal gut bacteria or the abnormal gut microbiota. And the other 50% of the time, the gut bacteria get messed up, and that is associated with depression. And a whole lot of these studies have been done in research animals, mice and rats, that sort of thing, because it's a little difficult to do some of these studies on people. but there are rat and mouse models of depression, for example, and they can manipulate the depression uh, depending on the way they feed the animals, or even with giving the animals the quote unquote normal bacteria. So the and obviously the bacteria can affect the functioning of the gut. The some of the things that occur with um, either infections or with just a not optimal gut bacterial pattern are things like heartburn and reflux, um, uh, duodenal ulcers and gastric ulcers can be caused by specific bacteria, and they used to be treated by surgery, and now uh, some antibiotics, a month-long course of antibiotics fixes all that. So the thing that is just fascinating is how complex the whole system is, how it works together, and um, the kinds of things that can be done to affect it. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Wow, this is a lot. Okay, so the next question I have is, John, I'll ask you, are there tests or evaluations someone can get to assess the health of their gut-brain axis? And with that, what should we be asking our doctors when we go to visit regarding the tests and a treatment plan?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, there's no single test that says your gut-brain axis score is 72%. It's just not that simple. Instead, we evaluate the gut-brain axis by looking at patterns. Now, that includes symptoms, history, lifestyle, diet, bowel habits, metabolic markers, inflammatory markers, and sometimes more specialized gut testing. A good starting point is a thorough clinical intake. A practitioner should ask about bowel movements, bloating, do you have acid reflux, reactions to food, energy after meal, cravings, sleep, stress, mood, focus, and checking inflammation. From there, a doctor may consider standard lab tests such as, fasting blood glucose, A1C, fasting insulin, the lipid panel, inflammatory markers like CRP, vitamin D levels, B12 levels, iron, ferritin, and thyroid markers. For a gut-specific evaluation, depending on the case, practitioners may consider stool testing, breath testing for SIBO, H. pylori testing, food sensitivity evaluations, celiac screening, lactose or fructose intolerance testing, assessments for reflux, motility, or malabsorption. The main point is this: testing should be guided by the symptoms. We don't want to just test randomly. We test to answer a specific clinical question. If somebody has chronic bloating or altered bowel movements and brain fog, that may lead us towards microbiome, SIBO, food intolerance, or an inflammatory evaluation to be done. If somebody has fatigue or abdominal weight gain, post-meal crashes, that'll lead us more towards a metabolic evaluation. So, yes, there are evaluations that can help, but the best approach is a pattern-based assessment, with a qualified practitioner based on the symptoms. Now, as far as what we should ask our doctor when we go to visit, that's really a great question, because many people go to the doctor and say, I'm tired or my stomach bothers me, but they don't really know how to frame the biggest pattern. I recommend going in prepared with, a clear symptom timeline. You might ask, could my digestive symptoms be connected to my fatigue or brain fog, mood, or my blood sugar issues? Should we evaluate for inflammation or insulin resistant, nutrient deficiencies, thyroid function, or gut related issues? Now, those are pretty in-depth questions to ask the doctor just sitting there in the meeting. So, that's it's your choice to do that, but that's the information you're going to need. And you also want to ask, do my symptoms suggest IBS or SIBO or some kind of food intolerance or acid reflux, which is pretty easy to identify if you've got it, or celiac disease. H. pylori or another condition, that those are easily ruled out or identified that you have. You really should ask, are there any red flags in my case that require more urgent testing or a referral to a gastroenterologist? Now, what would a step-by-step plan look like? And, how would we measure progress? Mm-hmm. The key is to ask for a plan, not just a product or a prescription. A good treatment plan should answer, what are we trying to rule out? What are we trying to improve? What lifestyle changes matter most? What labs or tests are appropriate? What's it going to look like in the first 30 or 60 days of the plan? And what symptoms are we really tracking? And when do we follow up? And what is the doctor going to refer out? I also do one thing. I encourage people to be very honest about their diet, their stress levels, their sleep, their alcohol intake, their medications, the supplements they take, what their actual bowel habits are, and any family history that might be pertinent. The more complete the information, the better your doctor or practitioner can provide you with a good plan, that'd be helpful to you.
Yeah. I just want to say something here quick. I think for me as a patient, I think one of the things that has made me like or dislike doctors is the ones who sat with me about a treatment plan. This just I'm going to write a prescription and I don't know, should I be feeling better in 24 hours? Should I be seeing this in 30 days? I think the treatment plan is so much more important than I think many times doctors realize with us, is because otherwise we sit in our own head and say, it's been 24 hours, I'm on an antibiotic, I don't feel better, not realizing that maybe we have to be on it for 5 days before we're really going to feel better from it. I know with me, that's a big thing. So when I get a really in-depth treatment plan, I'm much happier. I really am. Dr. Atkinson, I'm going to ask you the same 2 questions. What should we be asking our doctors? And are there any test or evaluations?
Well, I think John Payne has described this very, very well, to think about when you're going to the doctor to try to identify specific things that are bothering you. Now, sometimes that's just, gosh, in the last month, I've just been so tired, so fatigued, I can't get anything done. I'm sleepy all the time. And there are a number, as you've already heard, of gut problems that can be associated with this kind of thing. If you're having heartburn, if you're having constipation, if you're having diarrhea, try to be very specific about what your complaints are. That helps the doctor a whole lot. Vague symptoms, I just don't feel right, that's not going to be very helpful, and you're more likely to just get a prescription for an antidepressant.
True. That's so true.
So, as John has already said, depending on the symptoms, they're completely different workups. If you're having heartburn and stomach pains, well, one of the things that they might want to look for is irritable bowel syndrome. That's usually doesn't come on quickly. It's a long-term sort of a thing, but you need to separate that from something like an ulcer due to H. pylori. Because that's easily treated with an antibiotic, and if you've got constipation and diarrhea, one of the things that I certainly would want to know as a nutritionist would be, what are you eating? Are you eating the recommended types of diets, getting sufficient vegetables and fruits, getting sufficient fiber, because if you can increase your fruits and vegetables and fiber, just by itself may help constipation. But we talked about hormones earlier. You come in with constipation, and you could be hypothyroid, not have enough thyroid hormone, and that's a totally different test. And but that comes with a lot of other symptoms. So think about what has happened since this constipation has just been coming on. Thyroid disease is associated with being cold a lot and being sluggish and maybe gaining a little bit of weight, particularly sort of almost fluid. Um, so, try to specifically identify, think of all the things that are different, and think of anything that has happened. If you've had your neck sore, well, that could be a disease called Hashimoto's thyroiditis that can cause hypothyroidism, and that's easily treated with thyroid hormone. But if you don't tell the doctor that, it's they may not think of that and pick it up. And again, it depends. Have you got symptoms associated with a leaky gut? We haven't talked a whole lot about inflammation, but that certainly is their test to test for inflammation, to test for leaky gut. Anyway, I think I'll stop there and let Dr. Aftab give his take on this.
Dr. Aftab.
Yeah, your first question answer is, as John mentioned, that there's no single single test is available to test that gut disorder of gut-brain interaction. However, doctor and functional medicine specialists often use the combination of the targeted clinical evaluation and investigation. For example, symptom-based screening provide a validated questionnaire to correlate gastrointestinal symptoms like bloating, pain, issues, and neurological indication like anxiety, depression, brain fog. And other tests, there's a other test is they can do that comprehensive stool test to check the bacteria, and the neurotransmitter they can assess by the lab testing metabolic byproducts like short chain fatty acids levels. And about when we go to the doctor to discuss our problem, and then we have to ask these questions to the provider. What is the goal of the treatment? Number one, what are the available options for my treatments are there? What are the potential side effects and risk of this treatment? How long the treatment take and how will we measure the success? Then the medication procedures, why the specific treatment is best for us, what is the name of the medication and how do I take it? Are there interaction between the medicines or not? Then the next and the final step is, if there is anything happen, so to whom I contact, to you or your assistant, how I can reach you in the odd times also.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. And I think sometimes too often when we go to the doctor too, we expect them to understand what we're feeling instead of telling them what we're feeling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. Okay, the next question, John. Okay, I know I'm going to probably say this word wrong, but could issues like dysbiosis, I know it's probably not right, food sensitivities, or low stomach acid be contributing to brain fog, depression, or cognitive issues?
Well, to answer simply, yes, they can contribute. Brain fog, depression, and cognitive issues can have many causes. They can involve your sleep, your stress levels, trauma, medications, thyroid issues, anemia, vitamin deficiencies, blood sugar swings, an infection or neurological issues, mental health considerations, and more. But gut issues can absolutely be a part of the picture. Dysbiosis means the gut microbial ecosystem is out of balance. Cleveland Clinic describes dysbiosis as an imbalance in the type of organisms living in the body. As Dr. Atkins said, the bacteria or the organisms that are living in the gut. And this can have broad effects on our health. Food sensitivities or intolerances can create digestive stress, causes inflammation, discomfort, poor nutrient uptake. Low stomach acid may affect protein digestion, mineral absorption, microbial balance. Although it should be properly evaluated rather than just assumed, because the gut can influence the brain through several pathways. Inflammatory signaling, immune activation, microbial metabolites, vagus nerve communication, blood sugar regulation, nutrient absorption, and neurotransmitted related pathways. So yes, when someone has brain fog or mood challenges or mood changes alongside digestive complaints, it is reasonable for you to ask whether the gut is contributing or causing this. But the responsible answer is gut health should be evaluated as part of their whole picture, and that's how the doctor should present it to their doctor.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I was a kid, you were talking about the stomach acid and whether it absorbed it. When I was a kid, my mom would give me, I'm 65, almost 66. So, it was the big thing to have the Flintstones, all those little vitamins and stuff. So we thought they were cute. And I used to get sick when they would take them because, I remember my pediatrician once said I wasn't absorbing them properly. So I was getting sick from them. And looking back at it, I think they probably should have done more into it to find out why than just dismissing it as just don't take it, and hearing you guys now, I'm sitting here with all these years going, my goodness, I wish I had, known this. But Dr. Uptop, what is your take on this?
That is my same answer like Dr. John Payne mentioned that yes, it affects that. For example, gut bacteria produce majority of the body neurotransmitters, including 90% of serotonin and large amount of dopamine, GABA, and which are vital regulated foods. Systematic neuroinflammation and imbalance of gut bacteria increase the intestinal permeability, gut leaks, and allow the toxin undergo particle in the bloodstream, which cause the inflammation in the body. Food sensitivity, immune activation, unlike food allergic sensitivity, cause delayed low-grade immune response and ongoing inflammation. Then there's a side if that is a cytokines effect. When trigger food cause inflammation, the body release the protein called cytokines, which these inflammatory messengers can cross the blood-brain barrier and alter the brain chemistry and leading to the symptoms like brain fog, fatigue, and in other thing is the low stomach acid nutrition malabsorptions. Stomach acid require a breakdown proteins into amino acid, which build the blocks of neurotransmitters low acid impaired the absorptions, essential micronutrients like vitamin B12, iron, zinc, and others. Bacterial overgrowth, insufficient stomach acid remove the primary defense barrier, allowing the bacteria from large intestine to migrate to upward to the small intestine, leads small intestine bacterial overgrowth, a major cause of brain fog. I think I will stop, and now Dr. Atkinson.
Okay, thank you, Aftab. I want to stress a couple of things that you said. Uh, Again, my original point was that the system is so complex, and sometimes things from the brain can affect the gut, sometimes things from the gut can affect the brain. But I wanted to talk about two specific things that we haven't talked about much in the way of these symptoms. The first one is drugs and their effects, and the second one is food and their effects. We're, as Americans, very affluent. We're taking a whole lot of different drugs these days. In my clinic at the University of Wisconsin, more than 25% of the people were taking antidepressants. That's depressing in itself. But many of these drugs have significant effects on the brain and thereby on the rest of the body, or they may have effects on the body and again have effects on the brain, like as Dr. Aftab has said, causing brain fog or depression or whatever. So one of the critical things that you need to do when you're going to see the doctor is make a list of everything you're taking, all of the drugs, and all of the supplements. People have this idea that, and the supplement companies just are, I think, irresponsible by saying, "Oh, this is natural." Uh, anything is made up of chemicals. Any plants, any animals, they're all chemicals. And the idea that natural things from plants are going to just be perfectly okay and not going to hurt you is false. So especially the ones that are advertised as miracle drugs or miracle supplements. And if you look, there's 10 or 15 different herbs and chemicals and so forth. But if they're natural, they're not called chemicals, of course. So it's very important to tell your doctor about that. Now, the other thing, and both John and Aftab have talked about this, is food sensitivities. And on a very personal basis, my son-in-law suddenly began to have terrible hives and some diarrhea and trouble thinking and so forth. And he went to a physician and they put him on, they diagnosed, you can probably guess this, alpha-gal, the alpha-gal syndrome. This is a protein that's present in animal tissues that's not necessarily present in human, but we have things that bind to it and cause an immune reaction. And it can be completely life disrupting. He ended up on a incredibly restricted diet and was still having these things, because if you look at the things that you're eating, almost all of them have beef in it or pork in it, or whatever. Your capsules are frequently made of pork gelatin, and cream and milk have added, especially cream, added animal products that can cause this syndrome. I'm using this as an example of one thing that can affect the whole body and affect the brain, the gut, and everything else. Now, it was fascinating to me that he had heard of a physician down in Virginia Beach who did acupuncture on the ear, and it was magic. That he knew of several people who had alpha-gal and were completely cured of it. And he went down, and after a month later, he was grilling steaks. He could
Wow.
eat anything he wanted. So I was fascinated with that. It's not well researched, but it's an interesting thing to ask your doctor about if you do have that particular syndrome. But there are many foods that people are sensitive to or frankly allergic to that can cause um, uh, depression, mood changes. So you have to be very careful about that, and a referral to a dietitian or a nutritionist who is familiar with that kind of thing is often very useful. So I'll stop there and go to the next question.
Thank you. That was very interesting. You know, when one of my kids, his lung collapsed and he was in the ICU unit, and when they brought in all the doctors, they brought in, the typical ones, but then they brought in a dietitian and a nutritionist, and they sat down with them and said, this isn't all just other things. It can be your diet. It can be your lack of protein. It can be, and it was just kind of fascinating to me that when all these doctors descended on the room, there was also a dietitian and a nutritionist. And honestly, they were probably two of the most helpful to him. They were like, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that, you need this. And I think too often there are some things that we can, like with your son-in-law, that can change it, but we don't know them. So, and I think the good and the bad of the internet is, I think some people get on and then they decide that they have something then they don't know. And so then they run on that and then, oh, everything's wrong. And I think the good to it is, I think sometimes it opens up doors for us to ask other questions by hearing some things. That's one of the reasons why I want to do this webinar, because I think you give so much information to so many people that it kind of helps people calm down instead of over intensify their reaction to things. Okay, the next question, John, is what lifestyle changes such as diet, sleep, exercise do you recommend for better gut health? That along with what are some of the healthy foods or supplements that I should be taking to help with my gut brain health?
Well, the foundation is not complicated, but consistency absolutely matters. First, diet. I recommend focusing on whole foods, adequate protein, colorful plants, and enough fiber. The microbiome is strongly influenced by what we feed it, of course. The old saying, we are what we eat, is essentially true. Vegetables, berries, legumes, if you can tolerate them, oats, chia, flax, nuts, seeds, and resistant starch foods like green bananas can all help support beneficial bacteria. Secondly, reduce the things that irritate your system. These may include, excess sugar, ultra-processed foods, heavy alcohol intake, and foods that clearly trigger some symptoms in you. And I think in most cases, all of the above. contribute to that. Third is sleep. Poor sleep affects blood sugar, cravings, stress hormones, immune function, and gut motility. Gut health is not just about food. Sleep is it's definitely a part of the protocol. Fourth is movement. Regular walking, resistance training, and moderate cardio help insulin sensitivity or circulation, gut motility, stress resilience, and inflammation balances. Fifth, stress regulation. The gut-brain axis is bidirectional. Chronic stress can change motility, stomach acid levels, appetite, cravings, and gut sensitivity. For patients with IBS type symptoms, structured dietary approaches, are often, quite helpful. The American Gastroenterological Association notes that soluble fiber can help global IBS symptoms, and that, a low FODMAP diet is one of the most evidence-based dietary interventions for IBS when it's used appropriately and, usually on a limited trial. Now, I am not trying to tell everyone to go on a low FODMAP diet, forever. It's a tool, not a lifestyle identity. The old concept is, we are what we eat is really true. So, quite frankly, I always start with food. When you ask about what foods or supplements should be taken for gut and brain health, I always start with food. For gut and brain health, some of the best foods include high fiber vegetables, berries, fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, or kimchi, if you can tolerate them. Omega-3 rich foods like salmon, sardines, and chia or flax, extra virgin olive oil, nuts and seeds, beans and lentils, if you can tolerate them, herbs and spices like turmeric, ginger, garlic, and cinnamon, and obviously adequate clean protein. For supplements, it depends on the person. Common support options, can include, now here I recommend Technon because it's a broad spectrum based nutritional product that definitely contributes to gut health. But, everybody always talks about probiotics, but be careful with probiotics. If you got to get exactly the right strain that you actually need, because they sometimes can be helpful, but they can also be harmful. Prebiotic fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D if you're low in vitamin D, magnesium. That I to make a note of, I just came back from the Middle East last week. 80% of people living in the United Arab Emirates, which it's blazing hot over there. The sun shines all the time and the humidity's 900%, it seems like, okay? 80% of the people in the UAE have a deficiency in vitamin D, which is produced when your body's in the sun. 80% have a deficiency in vitamin D. Anyway, magnesium, digestive enzymes in some cases, targeted gut barrier support, B vitamins, if deficient or, if clinically indicated. Now, probiotics can be useful, but they're not magic. And I want people to understand, because the first thing everybody runs out and does is buy some probiotic, and they don't really know what they're buying. Okay, but they're not magic, and they're not all the same. The NCCIH notes that probiotics have shown promise in certain issues, but strain, dose, condition, and patient selection matter. Safety is also important, especially to people with serious underlying conditions, or immune compromise. But this is where a formula like Technon fits into the conversation. Technon is not positioned as a probiotic. It is designed as a broader gut-brain metabolic support formula, combining microbiome support, fiber-based support, metabolic support, antioxidant support, and it's got camel milk bioactives and colostrum bioactives that support gut and immune resilience. So, really the key is personalize it to you. The right supplement, for one person, like this particular probiotic, okay, may be wrong for another. And if someone gets worse with on probiotics or on a high fiber diet, then that's information that they need to take to their doctor, which will indicate that further evaluation needs to be done.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think we've become so overwhelmed with running to the store and purchasing supplements. And I mean, I've seen people legitimately have a bin like this, just full of all these supplements. And I think to myself, wow, how do you know that that you need all of those, or all of those are, they're not interacting or whatever, they're canceling each other. It's almost kind of scary, but it's kind of what we've put into people's heads now is, well, if you're not going to eat real, then go run and get all these supplements. And that's not necessarily the answer.
No.
Dr. Atkinson, what's your response to that question?
Well, I've just been writing down some things to think about. And we've talked about the importance of having a good diet. I'm a nutritionist. I've worked with dietitians all of my career, and there are dietitians who know what they're doing, and there are dietitians who are rigid and are 30 years out of date. So you have to be a little bit careful. Don't just take whatever advice that a dietitian might give you uh, if it doesn't seem right for you, or if if that changes. Having said that, the things that dietitians talk about, there are basic principles that are really important. And John has already talked about a lot of these. You want to have a diet that is that's colorful, that has different kinds of vegetables, that has plenty of fluid. I definitely don't recommend the sugar-based fluids. Um, and the other thing that we haven't talked much about at all is exercise. But for good health, everybody, and obviously in treating obese people, we talked a whole lot about diet and exercise as a treatment, and I don't like that. Diet and exercise are not a treatment of obesity. They are a treatment for everybody. And diet and exercise alone does not take care of obesity. I had many patients who lost 100 pounds or more and put it all back on with diet and exercise. But everybody should have a good, thoughtful diet, and they should get exercise 4, 5, or 6 times a week. That can just be walking or swimming or whatever, but exercise is absolutely critical for good gut health and for good brain health. Exercise alone was shown to decrease depression, for example. Exercise alone can significantly improve constipation. It can't emphasize enough that a good lifestyle is important. And that doesn't mean you can never have a piece of pie or never have a glass of wine. I mean, one thing that I showed and irritated dietitians a whole lot and nutritionists was a cartoon of an old guy sitting on the table. He was leaned over, and he had warts all over his face and wrinkles. And the doctor, and obviously he's very old, and the doctor said, "Remember those 20 extra years of life that you got from a good diet and exercise? These are they. So enjoy your life while you can, but also try to have good habits." Now, I have several little specific things I want to say. Sleep is very important. Look at the recommendations. People over the age of about 50 need 8 hours of sleep. You don't need 10 or 12 hours of sleep. You also don't need 5 hours of sleep. So look at the data and the literature and your own personal experience and figure out what is the right amount of sleep for you. If you're falling asleep during the day, that may be a little problem. Another thing, John was talking about soluble fiber, and I can't remember which one he said. Oh, green bananas. I hate green bananas, but many people like green bananas, and they are a good source of soluble fiber. But you can do just as well by taking a potato, mashing it or baking it, putting it in the refrigerator, let it get cold, and then heat it up again. Because as it gets cold, a lot of the fiber that's in the potato becomes insoluble and works very well. Um, let's see. We talked about vitamin D. I want to, and John talked about people taking all these things off of the internet, and that is an important point, because people read on something online and then take it as gospel. Well, you have to not trust most of what you hear online. And vitamin D is one of the ones that most vitamins, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference how many you take, because you just get rid of them. But the fat soluble vitamins, specifically vitamin D, particularly because so many people are being put on it because they're low, don't take too much, because that can itself cause problems. And finally, the only other thing that I'd like to talk about that's fascinating to me, and I don't know how it works, is this business of acupuncture. I did not believe in acupuncture. I thought it was nonsense. And when I was early in my training, Richard Nixon went to China, and I was in Washington at the time at Walter Reed Hospital, and they had articles in the paper about acupuncture, and I thought, this is really silly. And he came back, and the group of physicians had gone with him and filmed the traditional Chinese medicine, a lot of things, and one of them was acupuncture. And I saw absolutely amazing things. And so I vowed never to not believe something just because of my opinion or somebody else's opinion until it's been tested in good clinical trials by either me or somebody that I trusted. But this business of the ear acupuncture, I am blown away with. And I would encourage you to look into that, because this physician has got good data. Oops, I just got cut off here.
No, you're fine.
Okay. I can't see you all anymore. And there we go. This physician talks about how, and it can't be just sticking needles in your ear.
Right.
It's a sophisticated thing that somebody's trained that needs to know how to do it. But it decreases inflammation, and he's using it to treat all kinds of other things, arthritis, irritable bowel syndrome, and so forth. So there's very little research done on it, but having seen the results, I'm very interested in that, and recommend that people learn about it.
Yeah, I just want to say something real quick, and then Dr. Uptop, I'll get your answer. When Peyton was little, Peyton is autistic. And when Peyton was little, he really struggled to sleep. He would only sleep sitting in a swing with music. Or if we turned on Telemundo, not joking, we only speak English in our house, but we turned on Telemundo, he'd go to sleep. He loved Telemundo. But he wanted music or some sort of cadence of a voice. And one of the things my pediatrician, and she's originally from Spain, one of the things she told me to do, which worked, was I massaged his ears.
Mm.
And I don't know what it was. Do you remember that, Peyton, when you were little and I would massage your ears?
Yeah.
And it would calm him.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I was, mom of four. My youngest was autistic. I was homeschooling. I was working. I was just exhausted. And so I was like, I'll try anything. This isn't going to hurt him. It's not like I'm, sticking things in him. and he would go to sleep. And it was just amazing to me. And I remember thinking at the time, boy, I wonder why the massaging the ears, is doing it. But, I was so busy with everything else. I just went on with my life and kind of didn't pay attention. But now that you're saying that about the acupuncture of the ear, I wonder if there's, some sort of something in your ear that is that way, because it really would help. I tried everything with him. I tried walking with him like he was a tray on my arm. I did everything, and he just would not sleep. And, that was part of the first reason why how we knew he was most likely on the spectrum. And back then they wouldn't test, but my pediatrician was phenomenal. So she worked with me on it. But I remember her just saying, try this, just try it. She says, it's not going to hurt anything. And he would and I was like, whoa, how does this work? So there's times when I get really stressed, I'll even rub my ears. So I think I'm going to look more into the acupuncture. I mean, it's just kind of funny because that just came back when you were talking about that. So Dr. Oftop, what is your take on it? And then we have one more question, because one of the other questions that I was going to ask you guys pretty much answered, which was, is eating real work? And you guys already said pretty much yes. So we don't have to go through that one. But Dr. Oftop, what is your take on that question?
Basically, about this question, Dr. Atkinson and John Payne already explained in the they well explained about that. But anyway, I will just add up a little bit. And naturally optimizing the gut health follow these three key lifestyle adjustment: eat diverse fiber rich diet, fermented food, ensure 7 to 9 hours sleep for the gut tissue repairs, and complete at least 30 minutes walk or exercise. Performing the 30 minutes exercise, moderate cardiovascular exercise like walking, cycling, 5 days a week, physical activity increase the blood flow to the digestive organs, help stimulate the muscles in your gastrointestinal tract, and prevent constipation. Yeah. And rest of already they explained everything, so I think I have not to repeat again.
It's wonderful.
May I just add one thing? Again, from a personal basis, John has already put out the warning about the probiotics and the yogurt and the fermented things. And there are some people, and I'm one of them, who does not respond well to yogurt. I started to eat yogurt in my morning shake of milk, banana, strawberries, and blueberries, frozen strawberries and blueberries. And I started to get hives, urticaria, little hives on my arms during the day. And I read an article that talked about that, and I stopped it, and so I stopped having hives. So obviously this is a rare condition, but if you start something, if you start a medicine or if you start a food and you start to have new symptoms, think about stopping it and seeing if the symptoms go away. That's again food sensitivity.
I love that. And I think you're right. And I think the one thing that I hope everybody takes from this is going into the store and grabbing something off the shelf does not mean you're going to get healthy. And I think we have become so much that way, just like, I remember one time, John, you'll appreciate this. I had such horrible headache. I had had a terrible sinus infection before I went to Dubai. And I went and, stocked up on whatever, we put on our shelves, in the stores. And I'm taking it. And I couldn't take it anymore when I was in Dubai. And I went to a doctor over there, and he said to me, "Are you taking over-the-counter stuff for your sinuses?" I said, "Yeah, I always do." He said, "You know what? You're not getting rid of whatever is wrong. You're just stopping it all up in your head, which is causing you to get horrible headaches." And he got me to do different things. My headaches went away. But I was thinking that I was going to make it go away by taking something over the counter. And instead, I was actually adding to it. And I kept thinking, I need to take more things over the counter instead of understanding that what I was taking over the counter was actually causing more problems. But I think we've become that. I think we've too much of walk through a store, grab it off the shelf, and we're going to get better. And then we don't get better. And we just keep adding to it instead of understanding what it is. And I think today you guys have been so great with explaining that. I know we've changed since the last webinar. We've changed things in our house, haven't we, Peyton? Yeah. We have, because of the first one. You guys taught us a lot. So here's the final question. And before I ask this, I just want to say thank you to you guys. Seriously. I wish I could just, I know I'm going to sit and listen to this recording like 100 times. The fact that you give up your time to talk to people, to let people hear this, means so much, because I think we've become such a society of busy, go, 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 go. I'm going to get my answers from the internet, when you're not even asking the right questions half the time. And so the answer you're getting isn't necessarily applicable to you. I think these kind of things allow people to go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that maybe this particular thing was because I wasn't getting enough sleep, and no, I'm not walking, and no, I'm not eating this. Instead, again, it's supplement, supplement, supplement. And that's why the other day when somebody tried to say that John was a part of some big supplement company, I really hit the roof, because I was like, you're accusing someone who is actually out here trying to change things for people of something that he's actually standing against. And I called John. God bless John. He takes my calls. I called John. I'm like all in a tizzy. John's just like, John was less angry than I was. But, I was furious. So, but, I want to thank you guys, because this means so much to us. Our final question, and we get asked this all the time for this particular webinar. I probably had 20 people submit this. What red flags should I look for that require a visit to the doctor? John?
Well, this is very important. Natural support is valuable, but it should never replace appropriate medical evaluations. You really should see a doctor promptly if you have blood in your stool, black tarry stools, if you vomit blood, have any kind of unexplained weight loss, persistent vomiting, if you have difficulty swallowing, or severe or worsening abdominal pain, a persistent fever, chronic diarrhea, or chronic constipation that doesn't improve, any kind of major change in your bowel habits that lasts more than a few weeks, you need to see a doctor about. Anemia or extreme fatigue, if you show any signs of dehydration, or new neurological symptoms like some type of sudden weakness or confusion or facial drooping or severe headache, speech changes, or even vision changes. The Mayo Clinic itself states that vomiting blood in the stool, or black tarry stools require immediate medical care. And they also list persistent abdominal discomfort, changes in bowel habits, fatigue, fever, and unattended weight loss as important symptoms to have evaluated. Now, for digestive care specifically, Mayo Clinic Health System lists reasons to consider referrals such as persistent acid reflux, abdominal pain, sudden changes in bowel habits, difficulty swallowing, unexplained weight loss, chronic diarrhea or constipation, or an abnormal liver test. Quite frankly, the bottom line is this: if symptoms are severe, persistent, progressive, or involve bleeding, weight loss, or a fever, or any kind of noticeable neurological changes, don't self-treat. Go get evaluated. See a qualified professional. The main takeaway is that the gut connection gives us a more complete way to understand symptoms that we're having. Brain fog and digestive issues, fatigue, inflammation, metabolic problems, they may look separate, but I think what we've said today is they often overlap through the gut-brain metabolic axis. And, the goal is not to blame everything on the gut. The goal is to recognize that the gut is often one of the most important upstream places to start. Support the gut, support your microbiome, support the gut-brain barrier, support your metabolism, sleep efforts, you know, as Dr. Atkins said, move, get some exercise, support your nervous system, and many patients will then begin to build a stronger foundation, which, equates to overall wellness. But when symptoms are significant or of a concern to you, please go work with a qualified healthcare professional, get the right evaluation and start on the right plan.
Thank you. Dr. Aftab?
Yeah, basically, if there is a certain physical or mental changes you observe, and that is the red flags. So I can say that it is required the professional evaluation, and uh, we should go promptly see the doctor if experiencing like chest pain, shortness breath, sudden severe headache, unexplained weight loss, high fever, as well as any persistent pain, mental health changes, unusual bleeding, wound, uh, rashes on the body. While uh, to resolve this, we should go to the doctor and evaluate the symptoms and get the proper treatment, not try by ourselves to do our uh, like uh, our own judgment and get take the medicine over the counter. Basically, these are the severe things, and it can cause a big problem if we will not take care of on the time.
Perfect. Dr. Atkinson?
Well, I think John and Aftab have covered this very well. I will just say that if there's anything new that doesn't go away, uh, it's reasonable to go see a doctor about it. And some of the things that they've already said, uh, go to the doctor immediately. Severe pain, any neurological symptom like weakness or numbness, or loss of balance. Those kinds of things can signal something going on in the brain, a stroke, a bleed, a clot. Um, Bleeding is something that you definitely should not. I mean, a nosebleed is one thing, but if you're having bleeding that is, especially if it's significant, you got to go to the doctor or to the emergency room. Aftab has said chest pain or shortness of breath. There are a number of things that can cause each of those. Almost all of them are bad. So anything that is severe that is affecting your ability to function normally, you should see somebody.
Thank you. You guys have given us so much information, and I really appreciate it. And I think the one thing that I take away from this, and I hope everyone else that is listening to this does, we can rule out so many things like brain fog and some of the other things by working through the gut health issues that then allow us to think straighter for the more serious issues. Because I think we've become a society where I think too many Americans are one or the other. They either run to the doctor for everything or they never go to the doctor. And I will be honest, I'm one of those who doesn't go to the doctor. But when I was growing up, my pediatrician was one of those that was like to my mom, please don't take her in here unless something's really serious. And my cousin, who ended up becoming a doctor, he's actually an anesthesiologist, as funny as this is, his mom had a pediatrician that said basically, oh, he sneezed, bring him in. So he was always at the doctor, and I was never at the doctor. And I always thought when we got a little bit older, there should have been a happy medium. And I think what you guys have kind of helped us understand is not everything needs a doctor's visit, but there are certain things that do, and we need to change lifestyle. And if we change some lifestyle things, probably some of those things that we're running to the doctor for will go away. I mean, eating healthier, paying more attention to, getting sleep, exercise, everything else. So I really, truly appreciate you guys doing this. Like I said, we did the first one. I was overwhelmed with the response we got. I called you, John. Remember, I was really touched. Yeah. I was just, I mean, my phone lit up. I got emails. People were calling me. They were texting me. They were like, thank you. Thank you. I learned so much. So that's why we wanted to do another one. And we really deeply appreciate this. And I'm sure that when we put this out tomorrow, we'll get all that feedback of thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much. And we really appreciate your time. And if anybody has any questions, they can email me, Lynn, Lynne, at teamawesomism.com, and I will pass them along. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.